Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far and wide our viewers are tuning in. Now, imagine this. Sung Jin-Woo, the calculating, suddenly enters the Chainsaw Man universe. What happens next? Let's find out. The first thing Jinwoo notices isn't the screaming, or the ruined skyline, or even the smell of blood clinging to Tokyo's streets. It's the wrongness of the air. Gates usually feel structured to him, like a challenge waiting to be cleared. This one doesn't. The space bends as if fear itself is the architect. Buildings stretching unnaturally, shadows pooling where light should exist. Jinwoo lands without ceremony, boots cracking asphalt already fractured by devil attacks, his presence muted on instinct. This world runs on attention and terror. He refuses to give it either. A devil lunges from a collapsed storefront, its form stitched together by human fear, shrieking a name it no longer remembers. Jinwoo doesn't even draw a blade. A shadow peels off the ground and impales it cleanly, erasing it so fast there's no echo, no recoil, no rebirth. That's when Jinwoo pauses. Devils are supposed to return. Death here is supposed to be temporary, yet the fear tether snaps like a severed wire, and nothing comes back. No regeneration, no migration to hell, just absence. More shapes emerge, drawn to the sudden vacuum where fear should be recycling. Jinwoo raises his hand slightly, and shadows flood the street like a tide swallowing light. The fight lasts seconds. When it ends, the silence is heavier than the violence. The city feels smaller, as if something essential has been removed. Jinwoo realizes the truth with chilling clarity. His power doesn't just kill devils, it deletes them from the system that sustains this universe. Above, something stirs. Not a devil with claws or chains, but an awareness, ancient and watchful. Hell is paying attention. Jinwoo straightens, eyes scanning a sky bruised with red clouds, calculating outcomes before they form. If devils are sustained by fear, and fear dies when its source is erased, then every step he takes here rewrites the rules. Somewhere in the distance, alarms wail as devil hunters mobilize, unaware that the true disruption has already occurred. Jinwoo steps forward, shadows trailing him like a silent army moving deeper into a world that has just realized death has learned a new language, and it speaks his name. The streets ahead are no longer just damaged, they're unsettled. Fear doesn't behave normally anymore. Jinwoo can feel it thinning, like smoke pulled into a vacuum, and that unsettles him more than any enemy could. This world weaponizes terror the way dungeons weaponize monsters, and yet every devil he erased has left behind a gap that refuses to close. Civilians peek from shattered windows, their panic faltering, not because they feel safe, but because something else now occupies the space where fear should live. Jinwoo keeps his presence restrained, but even suppressed, his existence presses against the rules of this universe like a foreign object lodged in a wound. A massive shape crashes through an overpass ahead, a devil born from collective dread, its body a grotesque exaggeration of human imagination. It roars not in rage but in desperation, sensing something fundamentally hostile to its survival. Jinwoo doesn't wait. He steps forward, and this time he draws a blade, not out of necessity, but confirmation. One clean motion. The devil collapses, its form unraveling into shadow threads that refuse to return to hell. Jinwoo watches closely as the remains dissolve and then vanish completely. No reincarnation, no echo. The system is broken. That's when he feels it. A subtle pull beneath his feet, like gravity tugging in the wrong direction. The shadows around the fallen devil hesitate, then cling to him, not resisting, not rebelling, accepting. Jinwoo's eyes narrow. This world's dead are not bound by his authority, yet devils are something else entirely. They are fear given form, and fear, once killed, leaves behind obedience rather than resistance. He doesn't command the remnants, but they linger anyway, reshaping themselves into silent, incomplete soldiers. Jinwoo dismisses them immediately. This isn't the time to expand his army. This is reconnaissance. Above the city, unseen but unmistakable, a boundary ripples. Hell isn't just watching anymore. It's reacting. The disappearance of devils sends a shock through its hierarchy, like organs failing one by one without warning. Jinwoo senses hostility forming, but also confusion. Hell doesn't understand what he is, only that he represents a permanent loss. Somewhere far away, a presence stirs. Something primal, something ancient, tasting a fear it cannot reclaim. Jinwoo moves again, faster now, leaping rooftops with controlled precision, shadows anchoring his steps. In the distance, explosions bloom as devil hunters engage threats they still believe follow familiar rules. Jinwoo watches briefly from above as chainsaws roar and gunfire cracks the air, then turns away. Their battles are loud, desperate, reactive. His is silent, surgical, irreversible. And as he disappears into the maze of the city, Hell finally understands one thing with terrifying certainty. This intruder is not here to hunt devils. He is here to end their cycle entirely. Jinwoo lands on a half-collapsed rooftop overlooking a wide evacuation zone, emergency lights flashing below like dying stars. He crouches, surveying the movement patterns, already mapping this world the way a veteran hunter reads a dungeon floor. Something doesn't add up. Devils should be swarming a fear-saturated area like this, drawn to panic the way monsters are drawn to mana. Instead, the streets pulse unevenly, as if the fear itself is being interrupted mid-creation. Jinwoo exhales slowly. His very presence is contaminating the ecosystem. A tremor rolls through the city, deeper than explosions, heavier than collapsing concrete. This one isn't physical, it's conceptual. Jinwoo feels it brush against his senses, probing, measuring. Hell is no longer reacting blindly. It's testing boundaries. The shadows around him ripple in response, stretching and recoiling like muscles preparing for impact. Jinwoo doesn't summon them further. He knows escalation invites attention, and attention in this universe breeds countermeasures. Below, a devil hunter unit advances cautiously, weapons raised, unaware they're walking into a pocket of altered reality. A malformed devil bursts from underground, its body flickering as if unstable, its fear core struggling to anchor itself. Jinwoo watches as it lunges at the hunters, then falters mid-attack, its form glitching, unraveling. Confusion spreads across the devil's twisted face before it collapses in on itself, erased without Jinwoo lifting a finger. The hunters freeze, staring at empty air where an enemy should be reforming. It doesn't. The fear that created it never gets the chance. That's when Jinwoo understands the deeper threat. This world doesn't just run on fear. It depends on predictability. Devils rise, devils fall, devils return. Remove that rhythm, and the entire structure destabilizes. Humans won't know what to fear. Devils won't know how to exist. Hell won't know how to feed. Jinwoo straightens, eyes hardening. This isn't a battlefield anymore. It's a failing system, and he's the foreign variable accelerating the collapse. A pressure builds above him, invisible but immense, like a storm forming without clouds. Jinwoo resists the instinct to draw power, instead narrowing his focus inward. He recalls dungeons that adapted, bosses that learned mid-fight. Hell feels similar, but larger, more offended. I don't hate him yet, it fears him. And fear here is power. That realization sends a chill through even Jinwoo's controlled mind. If Hell learns to weaponize its fear of him, the next encounter won't be so one-sided. He steps off the rooftop, descending into the city's shadowed veins, moving where cameras don't reach and screams don't echo. With every erased devil, the world subtly shifts, rules loosening, consequences stacking without resolution. Somewhere deep below, chains rattle. Somewhere far above, something watches with intent sharpening into purpose. Jinwoo moves forward regardless because turning back isn't an option. He has already crossed the threshold, and this universe has already begun rewriting itself around the idea that death, once temporary, can now be final. Jinwoo feels it before he sees it. A presence threading through the city's fear currents, deliberate and controlled, unlike the feral pull of ordinary devils. This one isn't drawn to panic alone. It's tracking anomalies. He halts inside a ruined subway entrance, darkness swallowing the stairwell, and lets the shadows flatten against the walls. For the first time since arriving, he chooses stillness. In this world, movement invites notice, and notice invites escalation. The air tightens. Somewhere nearby, contracts are being invoked, lives weighed and exchanged in quiet bargains. Jinwoo doesn't hear the words, but he senses the cost. This universe trades in sacrifice, not strength. That difference matters. A devil manifests above ground, tall and distorted, its body stitched with symbols of authority and surveillance, eyes scanning rather than hunting. It isn't here to kill indiscriminately. It's here to confirm a hypothesis. Jinwoo watches from below as it tests the area, summoning lesser forms and letting them die just to observe the aftermath. None returned. The devil stiffens. Even fear, when observed closely enough, can panic. Jinwoo exhales once, slow and controlled, and releases a fraction of his presence. Not enough to dominate, just enough to inform. The shadows in the station stretch upward, slipping through cracks in the ceiling like veins reaching for a heart. The devil above freezes, realization dawning too late. Jinwoo doesn't attack directly. He severs the devil's anchor to fear, cutting the invisible thread that binds it to existence. The devil collapses soundlessly, erased without spectacle. No screams, no chaos. Just another hole punched into hell's accounting. That's the moment Jinwoo understands the full weight of what he's done. This world measures power through terror, but terror requires continuity. A promise that monsters will always come back. He has shattered that promise. Somewhere far beyond Tokyo, devils feel themselves thinning, weakening, losing definition as fear fails to replenish them. Hunters will call it a miracle. Hell will call it theft. The shadows around Jinwoo stir, restless now, responding not just to his will, but to the absence he leaves behind. He suppresses them again, jaw tightening. If he allows them to grow unchecked, this world won't adapt. It will collapse. And collapse invites something worse than devils. He moves forward through the tunnels, boots echoing softly, already anticipating the next reaction. Public safety will respond. Devils will escalate. And above all of it, something intelligent will begin connecting the dots. As Jinwoo emerges back into the night, Tokyo stretches before him, wounded but breathing, unaware that its greatest threat is no longer fear itself, but the certainty that fear can be erased. He lifts his gaze toward the city's highest towers, eyes cold, calculating the cost of staying versus the damage of leaving. The shadows gather at his feet, waiting for a command he hasn't given yet, as the universe around him prepares its first real answer to the presence of a monarch it never asked for and cannot afford to ignore. By the time public safety reacts, the damage is already classified as impossible. Reports flood in from across Tokyo, describing devils that vanish instead of retreat, fear spikes that collapse mid-manifestation, entire engagements ending without bodies or aftermath. For an organization built on patterns and probability, this is a nightmare scenario. If devils don't return, contracts lose leverage. If fear doesn't circulate, power hierarchies rot. Somewhere deep within a reinforced command room, the conclusion is reached quietly and without debate. This is not a new devil. This is something worse. Jinwoo senses them before he sees them. Human intent carries a different weight than fear, sharper, more focused. He's moving along an elevated rail line when the first suppression unit locks onto his position, floodlights snapping on in unison, rifles raised, safety protocols overridden. They don't shout warnings. They've been instructed not to provoke. Jinwoo stops anyway, hands relaxed at his sides, shadows pinned close to his feet. He understands this posture. Hunters meeting the unknown always hope restraint will be mistaken for weakness. Aki Hayakawa advances first, calm to the point of tension, his gaze fixed on Jinwoo as if measuring distance rather than hostility. Behind him, Denji vibrates with barely contained energy, chainsaws whining under his skin, while Power grins too wide, excited by the promise of violence she doesn't yet understand. Jinwoo studies them the way he studies dungeon parties, noting fractures, dependencies, emotional liabilities. These aren't soldiers. They're weapons held together by contracts and desperation. A devil manifests between them, summoned deliberately, its purpose not to attack, but to provoke a response. It lunges, shrieking, fear flaring just long enough to register. Jinwoo doesn't move. A shadow rises on its own, skewering the devil mid-charge, erasing it so completely the air seems to snap shut. Denji freezes. Aki's grip tightens. Power's smile falters. They've all seen devils die. None of them have seen one fail to come back. The silence that follows is heavier than any explosion. Public safety's operators watch their monitors spike and then flatline, data streams failing to categorize what just happened. Jinwoo remains still, letting them process the truth he isn't interested in explaining. He didn't attack them, he didn't threaten them, and yet, in a single moment, he's demonstrated that every rule they rely on is optional in his presence. Denji takes a step forward anyway, instinct overriding caution, chainsaws roaring to life as fear and excitement blur together. Jinwoo shifts his stance slightly, not in preparation to strike, but to receive. The world has chosen contact, and the next move will define whether it becomes negotiation or war. Denji moves first, not because he's ordered to, but because standing still has never been his strength. The chainsaws tear free with a violent scream, carving the air as he launches forward, driven by raw instinct and a lifetime of being pointed at problems and told to cut. Jinwoo doesn't flinch. He tracks Denji's approach with unsettling calm, already calculating trajectory, power output, and killing intent here, just momentum and hunger. That matters. The impact never lands. Shadows surge upward not as a wall but as restraints, wrapping around Denji's limbs mid-swing and slamming him into the concrete with enough force to crack steel supports beneath the rail line. The chainsaws keep spinning, sparks flying as they grind uselessly against shadow that refuses to tear. Denji struggles, laughing at first, then gritting his teeth as he realizes he can't move. This isn't a devil's trick. It's control without malice. He reacts instantly, fingers already stained with blood, as he invokes a contract he swore he wouldn't rely on lightly. The air fractures as an unseen blade slices toward Jinwoo, fast enough to kill most targets before they register danger. Jinwoo tilts his head slightly, the attack passing so close it disturbs his hair before dispersing into nothing. He doesn't counterattack. Instead, he steps forward, closing the distance at a pace that forces Aki to retreat without understanding why. Power hesitates, instinct screaming that this is not a fight she can bully her way through. Jinwoo stops just short of them, his presence finally leaking through restraint, not as intimidation, but as inevitability. Shadows spread outward, crawling across the ground, up weapons, along walls, mapping every possible movement. The devil hunters feel it immediately, the sensation of being inside someone else's territory. Radios crackle with overlapping commands from command centers struggling to reassert control. But no one on the ground listens. Every eye is locked on Jinwoo. He speaks, his voice calm, measured, carrying no threat. He isn't here to hunt humans. He isn't aligned with devils. He doesn't answer to hell. The simplicity of the statement terrifies them more than a declaration of war would have. Aki lowers his weapon slightly, recognizing the opening for what it is. Denji stops struggling, finally understanding that the figure standing over him could have ended the fight before it began. Above them, unseen by most, a presence shifts its focus. Contracts stir, chains tighten. Jinwoo feels it like a finger tapping against his spine. Someone important has noticed. Public safety has made contact, and in doing so, they've done exactly what hell wanted. They've confirmed he's real, independent and uncontrollable. As Jinwoo releases Denji from the shadows and steps back into the darkness, the hunters are left with a truth they can't file away. This was not containment. This was a warning. The aftermath lingers long after Jinwoo withdraws. Public safety regroups in uneasy silence, the kind that follows an encounter no amount of training prepares you for. Med teams rush to Denji only to realize there's nothing to treat. No wounds, no internal damage. Just the imprint of pressure, as if the world itself had decided to hold him still and then let go. Denji laughs it off, louder than necessary, but his eyes keep drifting to the shadows stretching under the rail line, half expecting them to move again. Aki doesn't look away. He's replaying every second, every decision, every contract option he didn't use. The thing that unsettles him most isn't how easily Jinwoo restrained them. It's how deliberately he avoided killing anyone. Devils don't do that. Devils revel or retaliate. This was neither. This was an assessment. Somewhere in Aki's mind, a quiet fear takes root. If this entity decides humans are part of the problem, no contract in the world will matter. Back at headquarters, analysts argue over classifications that no longer fit. Devil? No. Hybrid? Impossible. Primal? The data doesn't align. Footage shows devils being erased in ways that contradict every established law. Fear readings drop sharply after his appearances, not spiking, not redirecting, just collapsing. Senior officials exchange glances that say what none of them want to voice. Their leverage is built on devils existing, on fear being eternal. This Jinwoo moves unseen through the city, already aware of the surveillance tightening around him. Cameras flicker and die as shadows interfere without instruction, responding to perceived threat rather than command. He allows it for now. Public safety isn't his enemy, but they're not neutral either. They're a system designed to manage chaos, and systems don't tolerate variables they can't predict. He senses contracts flexing, powerful ones, layered with conditions and consequences. Someone is preparing contingencies that involve sacrifice on a national scale. From a high-rise rooftop, Jinwoo watches devil hunters redeploy below, squads tightening formations, fear mixed with determination. He understands them better than they realize. Hunters everywhere are the same. They face monsters because someone has to, even when the rules are unfair. His jaw tightens. If this world forces its defenders to trade years of their lives for borrowed power, then it's already broken in ways devils alone can't explain. A ripple of intent brushes against him again, sharper this time, focused. Jinwoo turns his gaze toward a distant administrative building, windows glowing softly despite the hour. He doesn't see her, but he feels her attention settle like a weight, controlled, curious, dangerous. This is no field operative. This is a command given flesh. Jinwoo doesn't move, doesn't retaliate. He lets the moment stretch, a silent acknowledgement between predators who recognize each other. Public safety has made first contact, and now the masks are coming off. Orders will escalate. Contracts will be tested. Devils will be pushed into battles they were never meant to win. Jinwoo steps back into the dark, already anticipating the next confrontation, knowing restraint will soon stop being an option. The moment he erased devils permanently, negotiation became temporary. And somewhere within public safety's highest ranks, the decision is forming that will turn observation into an attempt at control. Jinwoo doesn't need heightened senses to know the city has shifted its posture. The air feels tighter, disciplined, as if Tokyo itself has been placed on alert. Public safety's presence multiplies, patrol routes overlapping, watchers watching the watchers. They're no longer reacting. They're preparing. Jinwoo moves through alleys and service corridors, staying just ahead of containment grids designed for devils that obey fear and pain. These do neither. In a secure operations room, a decision is finalized. Contact has failed to establish hierarchy. That alone disqualifies negotiation. Jinwoo feels the moment it happens, a subtle snap like a contract ceiling somewhere above him. The world hums faintly, reality adjusting to accommodate something costly being invoked. Whatever public safety is about to try, it won't be surgical. It will be overwhelming by design. A devil is released deliberately, not into a population center, but into Jinwoo's projected path. This one is different. Heavy with bindings, layered in symbols of restraint and obedience. Its existence sustained by multiple contracts feeding into it at once. Its bait and test combined. Jinwoo stops in the middle of an empty intersection, streetlights flickering as the devil emerges, radiating authority rather than raw fear. He doesn't draw his weapon. He watches, measuring how much of the city they're willing to gamble to see him bleed. The devil strikes first, reality warping around its attack, laws bending under contractual weight. Jinwoo steps into the blow instead of away from it, letting it connect. The impact cracks the pavement, sends shockwaves through nearby buildings. For a heartbeat, public safety's monitors spike with confirmation. He can be hit. Then the shadows surge, swallowing the devil whole, compressing it into nothing. No resistance, no aftermath. Another permanent loss. Across the city, contracts tremble. Hunters stagger as borrowed power recoils violently. Payment demanded without the promised return. Jinwoo straightens slowly, dust falling from his coat, eyes lifting toward the building where the decision was made. There's no anger in his expression, only clarity. They've crossed the line from caution to coercion. He doesn't pursue. He doesn't retaliate. That restraint is what terrifies them most. Public safety has confirmed what hell already knows. Force won't work, control won't stick, and containment is a fantasy. Jinwoo turns away from the intersection and vanishes into shadow, leaving behind a city that now understands it has invited a power it cannot command. By the time dawn threatens the horizon, orders circulate quietly through public safety's upper ranks. The objective shifts from assessment to survival. And somewhere above all of it, a presence watches the city with measured interest, already planning a different approach. Public safety has made first contact, and in doing so, they've accelerated the inevitable. The next encounter will not be on their terms. Makima does not rush. She never does. While public safety scrambles to revise protocols and devils vanish from the city without explanation, she watches from a distance, hands folded, expression calm enough to pass for indifference. Control is not about force, it is about certainty, and certainty requires observation. Jinwoo's existence fascinates her not because of the destruction he causes, but because of what he refuses to do. He avoids unnecessary death. He ignores provocation. He does not posture. Those are not the traits of a devil drunk on fear. Those are the habits of something that believes the outcome is already decided. Their meeting is arranged without theatrics. No ambush. No contracts invoked in advance. Makima steps into an open plaza reclaimed by silence, her footsteps unhurried, the city unconsciously bending around her presence. Jinwoo stands waiting, shadows disciplined at his feet, already aware she is coming long before she arrives. When their eyes meet, the space between them tightens, not with hostility, but with recognition. Two entities built on authority, each accustomed to the world yielding. Makima speaks first, her voice soft, conversational, carrying the weight of a command disguised as kindness. She doesn't demand obedience. She assumes it. The suggestion seeps into the air, into the ground, into the thoughts of everything that listens. Jinwoo feels it brush against him, probing for hierarchy, searching for a place to anchor. He allows it to touch him fully. This is deliberate. He wants to understand the mechanism before he decides whether to break it. For a moment, the world holds its breath. Makima's power tightens, invisible chains sliding into place, attempting to rewrite Jinwoo's position in the order of things. The shadows react instinctively, flaring in protest, but Jinwoo restrains them with a thought. He doesn't resist yet. He lets the pressure build, lets the control attempt define itself. Makima's eyes sharpen almost imperceptibly. Something isn't aligning. Her authority is absolute over those who recognize it. Jinwoo does not. The realization lands quietly but decisively. Control requires submission, even if it's subconscious. Jinwoo stands outside that framework entirely. He is not denying her. He is simply beyond the scope of what she can command. For the first time, Makima feels the strain of exertion without return. The world does not bend the way it should. Instead, something bends toward Jinwoo, shadows shifting in subtle response to the tension she has introduced. The balance of the plaza changes, not in her favor. Makima smiles then, small and measured, recalibrating instantly. This is not a failure. It is data, and data to her is power. She releases the pressure as easily as she applied it, masking the moment behind a calm expression. Jinwoo inclines his head slightly, not in respect, but acknowledgement. They have both learned something dangerous. Control does not work on him, and whatever cannot be controlled must either be broken or redirected. Jinwoo steps forward slowly, letting the shadows at his feet ripple like a tide testing the edges of a new shore. He doesn't speak. There is no need. Makima watches every subtle movement, every shift in weight, every micro-expression. Evaluation. This is different from any devil she has encountered. Devils react, obey, fear, or bargain. Jinwoo does none of these. He assesses, he calculates, he acts only when the variables align. That makes him unpredictable, and in her world, unpredictability is dangerous. She tries again, this time with nuance. Not overt commands, but indirect influence. Small threads of psychological pressure designed to weave through instinct rather than logic. Jinwoo tilts his head, letting the sensation wash over him. He does not recoil, does not resist, does not submit. The shadows respond subtly, not to his will, but to the ambient tension, curling and uncoiling in the space between them, as though they recognize the attempt. Makima notes it immediately. Her control does not fail. It simply cannot apply. It is like trying to bind a river with rope, a force too fluid, too adaptive to ever hold. Jinwoo finally speaks, voice calm, deliberate, measured. He doesn't challenge her authority. He states facts, observations about the way this world's hierarchy functions, the role fear plays in sustaining power, the ways in which her influence depends on predictable responses. Makima listens, tilting her head slightly, calculating. That calm, measured voice carries more weight than chains, contracts, or contracts layered over contracts. It is an acknowledgement of rules she assumes she controls, spoken by someone who exists outside them. The plaza trembles faintly as shadows extend further, exploring the boundaries of influence Makima attempts to assert. They brush against her domain, not aggressively but curiously, as though testing her reach. Makima does not falter. She tightens her grip on perception, drawing the subtle layers of control around her like an invisible web. She pushes against Jinwoo, nudging, prodding, probing, not with violence, but with expectation. Yet even as she tests, she recognizes the futility. He adapts faster than her manipulations can take effect. Her eyes narrow almost imperceptibly, noting the rare resistance of a being whose very existence defies her standard operating principles. Jinwoo remains still, shadows anchored at his feet, energy quiet but potent. Makima recognizes that this is not defiance, nor fear, nor aggression. It is something else entirely. He is a constant variable, a force that cannot be contracted, coerced, or subsumed. And in that understanding, both of them shift slightly in perception. He evaluates her. She evaluates him. For the first time, Makima considers an entity she cannot rewrite or absorb into her system. That thought sharpens her focus and her interest simultaneously, for control is her nature, and anything beyond it is both threat and fascination. The plaza, though empty of civilians, feels heavier now. Every shadow, every stone, every flickering light bends subtly around the two of them, responding to a tension neither chooses to break. Makima exhales slowly, releasing the threads she has woven, retracting her subtle grip on the environment. Jinwoo's stance relaxes fractionally in response, but he does not lower his guard. They stand opposite one another, silent, each having tested limits and found the other beyond conventional reach. The air seems to hum, charged not with energy but with potential. A single misstep, a single miscalculation could escalate what is already a precarious standoff into an irreversible conflict. Makima's lips curve into a faint, almost imperceptible smile, concealing the calculus racing behind her gaze. Control has failed, but observation has succeeded, and in her world, understanding the rules, even if only partially, is the first step toward mastering them. Jinwoo's shadows return. The encounter ends not with violence, but with a recognition that a new balance, however temporary, has been established. Both know that what comes next will not be subtle, and the city itself seems to sense the forewarning embedded in the tension between these two incomparable forces. Makima studies Jinwoo like one studies a puzzle with pieces that refuse to fit, each movement, each shift in shadow, each subtle gesture analyzed for meaning, for weakness, for opportunity. She knows that in this world control is absolute, or it is meaningless. Yet here stands a man whose very presence renders her authority inert. She steps forward, the sound of her heels against broken pavement muted but deliberate, echoing faintly through the empty plaza, signaling approach without aggression. Jinwoo remains motionless, shadows flickering in response to her proximity, testing, feeling, like sentinels aware of the power tension building between them. For a moment, the world seems to pause. Civilians elsewhere remain oblivious to the standoff. But the invisible currents of fear, contracts, and latent authority twist toward this one point, responding instinctively to the clash of two fundamentally incompatible forces. Makima tilts her head, letting a subtle ripple of influence wash over him. Not a command, not an attempt to coerce, merely a probe, like dipping a finger into water to test its temperature. Jinwoo does not flinch. He does not resist. He does not engage. He simply lets it reach him, observing the structure, the methodology, the limitations. Shadows twitch around his boots, not attacking, but alert, calculating the parameters of a power that even Makima cannot fully impose. She refines the probe, layering nuance upon nuance, threading her will through micro-expectations, emotional triggers, and instinctual responses. Each layer is a test, a measurement of his boundaries, and each layer fails to take hold. Jinwoo remains anchored outside her sphere, a being whose very existence defies the laws she has mastered. Makima's eyes sharpen. She senses for the first time the resistance of something truly unmanageable. Her curiosity spikes, bordering on professional fascination as she recognizes an entity whose foundation is built on rules she cannot override. Yet she does not retreat. Instead, she shifts strategy. Observation becomes the instrument, patience becomes the tool, and quiet calculation becomes the method by which she engages this anomaly. Jinwoo, for his part, studies her with equal intensity. Her approach is not arbitrary. Her confidence is not empty. She commands the environment and every observer within it, even if they are not conscious of it. He notes the subtle manipulations in the air, the way fear and submission ripple outward from her position, the invisible pressures that twist thought and instinct. He does not resist because resistance is unnecessary. He analyzes because understanding is paramount. And in this moment, the plaza between them becomes a laboratory, a testing ground for forces that could reshape the balance of the world if mishandled. The shadows around him shift in response to the unseen tug of authority, stretching, coiling, and recoiling as if acknowledging the existence of power they cannot contain. Makima tilts her head again, recognizing this subtle acknowledgement, and the realization strikes her with measured intensity. This man does not submit, but he does not challenge in the conventional sense either. He adapts, anticipates, calculates, and reacts without emotion clouding the decision. In her experience, such precision is rare, and it is dangerous. Dangerous enough to merit closer examination, careful engagement, and a mental record of every nuance for future strategic application. For several long moments, the plaza remains suspended in tension. Neither moves aggressively. Neither retreats. Both are testing, measuring, calibrating, setting parameters for what could become an inevitable clash. The city around them hums faintly with residual energy. The echoes of erased devils, disrupted fear, and latent contracts combining into a background pulse that neither can ignore. Makima exhales softly, retracting the subtle layers of influence she has woven, leaving only a trace, a marker for future interaction. Jinwoo adjusts his stance fractionally, shadows condensing but not attacking, silently signaling that the encounter has been acknowledged, assessed, and contained within his own parameters for engagement. In that careful balance, both understand the dangerous potential of the other. Makima has not controlled him. She has not defeated him. Yet she has learned the structure of his power and the limits of her reach. Jinwoo has not submitted, nor has he committed to confrontation. But he has observed, measured, and noted the methods, strengths, and strategies of someone whose influence could shape the trajectory of the world if wielded effectively. And in that unspoken exchange, the rules of engagement have shifted. What comes next will not rely on convention. What comes next will rely on understanding, anticipation, and the careful dance of forces, neither fully capable of subduing the other, but both capable of reshaping the city around them if the balance is disturbed. Makima steps back slightly, her expression serene but calculated, as if the slight adjustment of her posture alone could shift the tides of reality. She does not smile, does not frown, yet every subtle movement conveys intent. She knows control is futile here, but observation is not. She files every nuance of Jinwoo's behavior, the microsecond delay in his reaction to her will, the way shadows coil and tighten not at her command, but at the invisible pressure she imposes, the calculated way he measures risk and response simultaneously. Each detail is a puzzle piece, a fragment of understanding she can exploit later. Control may be impossible, but knowledge is always a weapon. Jinwoo watches her in turn, his eyes narrowing fractionally, analyzing the layers of influence surrounding her. He senses the contracts embedded in her presence, the unspoken bindings woven into her authority, and the subtle manipulations of perception that extend even into the shadows around him. None of it surprises him. He recognizes the architecture of power, the dependence on predictable reactions, and the fragility of systems built on fear. He does not act aggressively, does not push back unnecessarily. He simply exists, letting her probes reach their limits, letting the interaction define itself, all while maintaining absolute control over his own force. The plaza feels charged, not with energy, but with the weight of unspoken intent and the understanding of power that transcends conventional rules. For a tense stretch of time, neither moves, neither speaks beyond the weight of presence that saturates the space between them. Shadows writhe subtly around Jinwoo, responding instinctively to the tension he senses, curling around unseen edges of Makima's influence. She tilts her head slightly, noting the subtle acknowledgement of her presence without submission. Her lips press into a line, a faint exhalation slipping between measured breaths, signaling recalibration. She is not frustrated. She is intrigued. Observation, after all, can be just as powerful as domination if applied correctly. Her mind races quietly, plotting contingencies, anticipating responses, cataloging every variable. Jinwoo is unpredictable, yes, but he is not irrational. That is the edge that interests her most. Jinwoo, unshaken, adjusts his stance minutely, maintaining the equilibrium of shadows around him. He senses her intent, parses it, evaluates the potential consequences of every subtle shift, every unspoken suggestion. He does not underestimate her. Anyone with command over fear, contracts, and influence at her level is dangerous in a conventional sense, but she is not operating within the same framework as him. Her strength lies in manipulating those who recognize hierarchy, those who submit to authority, those who fear the consequences of refusal. Jinwoo is none of these. The recognition is mutual. He adapts, calculates, and notes, preparing for contingencies that may never need to be enacted, yet keeping them ready in case the situation escalates. The city around them seems suspended, aware of the tension, responding unconsciously to the interaction. Windows reflect shadows that should not exist. Streetlights flicker in response to the concentrated presence of two entities operating beyond normal parameters, and the faint vibrations of erased fear ripple through the concrete and steel. Neither Jinwoo nor Makima acts overtly, yet every moment is a study in dominance, restraint, and potential escalation. Civilians elsewhere may remain unaware, but the currents of power, observation, and adaptation intersect at this plaza in a way that marks it as a turning point. Makima finally tilts her head, a signal of acknowledgement rather than submission, retracting the delicate layers of control she had tested without relinquishing curiosity or intent. Jinwoo does not react aggressively, but allows a slight relaxation of the shadows at his feet, an unspoken recognition that the encounter has reached a temporary equilibrium. Both understand the invisible rules have shifted. Neither has gained dominance, but both have gained understanding. They are measured against each other, not through confrontation, but through observation, each cataloging the capabilities, limits, and potential of the other. And in that silent, charged exchange, the plaza itself seems to record the meeting, a subtle imprint of tension and foresight, as though the world around them is aware that what happens next will redefine the balance of power in ways neither city nor universe can ignore. The encounter ends without a strike, without coercion, yet the implications reverberate silently through Tokyo. Jinwoo steps back into shadow, his presence still commanding without assertion, while Makima remains poised, contemplative, and ready. Both know that this meeting has changed the rules. The control is no longer the measure of influence here, and that the next interaction will carry the weight of what they have learned. The plaza remains charged, a quiet monument to the first true recognition of two forces too potent to dominate each other, setting the stage for the inevitable escalation to come. Jinwoo doesn't feel the first wave. He senses it. Beneath the city, across oceans, within hell itself, an awareness shifts, recognizing an anomaly that refuses to conform to established hierarchies. Low-tier devils react instinctively at first, scattered and confused, vanishing in mid-attack as shadows erase them before they can complete their movements. Jinwoo observes this quietly from a high-rise, his silhouette barely noticeable against the crimson-streaked sky. Every erased devil, every gap left in the system, resonates outward like a ripple through the ecosystem. Fear diminishes, but hell notices not just the absence, it notices the source. He is no longer a visitor. He is a variable that cannot be ignored. High-tier devils begin to stir. These are creatures beyond comprehension, embodiments of fear refined into primal forms, each one attuned to the balance between life and death, chaos and order. Normally, such devils respect territory, maintain cycles, and engage only when provoked. Jinwoo's presence disrupts all of it. They attempt to assert dominance, appearing simultaneously across the city in impossible numbers, shadowed and monstrous, bodies towering above rooftops, claws extended, eyes glowing with raw existential fury. And yet, with each assault, they vanish. Shadows sweep like liquid across streets, piercing through limbs, bodies, and fear cores alike, erasing existence so completely that even hell struggles to reconstitute them. Makima's prior observation matters here. She had understood him, measured him, and now the consequences of that understanding ripple outward. Hell recognizes him not as a threat that can be negotiated with, but as a predator that undermines its authority. Chains of command that govern the flow of fear, the resurrection of devils, and the hierarchy of power begin to fracture. Units fail to respond as expected. Battles collapse into silence, and the very architecture of hell quivers under the realization that one being can nullify systems designed to endure for millennia. Jinwoo senses the tension even without direct contact. Something primal has shifted, and it is moving, focused, and intent. The first massive encounter erupts in a desolate industrial district. A primal-class devil descends, colossal and layered in armor forged from the fear of countless generations. Its roar shakes the foundations of the city. Streets fracture, cars are thrown as if weightless, windows shatter, and the echoes carry the scent of despair. Jinwoo approaches methodically, his shadows stretching like sentinels ahead of him, scanning for weaknesses in both structure and strategy. He doesn't panic, doesn't hesitate. The primal devil swings with devastating force, cleaving through concrete and steel, yet the shadows respond almost preemptively, ensnaring the strikes and dissolving the attacker into nothingness. The sheer scale of the erasure astonishes even Jinwoo himself. The rules of this universe are bending, reshaping around him in real time. Every subsequent assault from hell escalates in both number and intensity. Smaller devils, once predictable, now exhibit erratic behavior, sensing instability in their own resurrection cycles. Medium-tier devils attack in coordinated waves, attempting to flank and trap, yet the shadows adapt seamlessly, intercepting every strike before it lands. Jinwoo's movement is precise, almost casual, yet the consequences of his actions reverberate across Tokyo. Buildings collapse not from his strikes, but from the sheer destabilization of fear-infused energy being erased repeatedly. Civilians flee instinctively, though they cannot comprehend what forces they are witnessing. Above the chaos, Makima observes silently, detached but intrigued. She notes the subtle interplay between Jinwoo and the primal entities, how his shadow army moves not just in defense, but with calculated offense that erases the rules themselves. She recognizes that hell is learning, adapting, and now taking the first conscious steps toward aggression, not against humans, but against him. Jinwoo is no longer a participant in a battle. He has become the axis around which hell must react or risk losing control entirely. The escalation is deliberate. High-tier and primal devils, normally rulers of territory and fear, begin coordinating in ways previously unseen. They adapt, strategize, and anticipate, responding to erased threats with more aggressive, more unpredictable tactics. Yet even as they converge, Jinwoo's shadows spread faster than they can anticipate, forming barriers, restraining assaults, and striking selectively. He does not need to overwhelm them entirely. He only needs to maintain control over the flow of destruction. Each erasure sends shockwaves back to hell, signaling that its forces, even at full strength, are insufficient to subdue this new monarch. Deep within hell, councils of ancient devils convene, sensing the collapse of authority from above and below. They speak in terms rarely uttered outside of whispered prophecy: existential threat, system failure, anomaly of death itself. Orders are dispatched across dimensions, summoning every available asset to focus on this single entity. Yet hell is cautious. This is not recklessness. Every attempt to strike has already failed to leave a permanent mark, and it is clear that the Shadow Monarch does not obey the same laws as any being they have encountered. The hierarchy trembles because he exists outside it, reshaping fear, erasing death, and redefining what it means to wield power in this universe. Jinwoo, aware of the growing attention, does not panic or accelerate the fight unnecessarily. Methodical, shadows extending across the city, assessing both threats and opportunities, responding to attacks with calculated precision. Yet the magnitude of the response from hell is impossible to ignore. He senses the pressure rising not only from physical threats but from the intent behind them, the concentrated focus of an entire dimension mobilizing against him. For the first time, he acknowledges the scale of what he has become. Not a mere hunter, not a participant, but a singular force challenging the very foundation of Hell's authority. Orders escalate further, summoning entities that blur the line between myth and nightmare. Devils previously thought impossible are now being sent, their forms abstracted into pure manifestations of fear, primal instincts, and corrupted hierarchy. They converge on Tokyo with precise intent, destroy, overwhelm, and reclaim the balance Jinwoo has disrupted. Yet with every advance, shadows preemptively strike, dissolving their forms before their full power can be realized. Jinwoo's awareness grows, his strategy adapting in real time. Each erasure compounds the instability of Hell's forces, accelerating the collapse of its normal operational structures. The city becomes a battlefield layered with shifting forces, both visible and unseen. Humans caught in the peripheral chaos, and Jinwoo standing as the axis of this unfolding war. The scale of the conflict has expanded beyond physical combat. It is systemic, conceptual, existential. The very rules that govern life, death, and fear are being rewritten, and Hell has finally recognized the truth. The Shadow Monarch cannot be contained, cannot be negotiated with, and must be eliminated if it wants to maintenance. Jinwoo pauses atop a skyscraper, observing the waves of devastation colliding with his calculated domain of shadows. His eyes scan the battlefield, not for victory, but for understanding. Each erased entity, each collapse of a primal devil, resonates through the multiverse of fear, a signal that the monarch does not simply fight, it rewrites. Hell responds in kind, its forces escalating to levels previously reserved for world-ending anomalies. Yet even here, Jinwoo's methodical precision and ability to anticipate every strike keep him one step ahead. The Shadow Monarch has become a singular force that Hell cannot ignore, and the declaration of war is no longer theoretical. It is active, palpable, and imminent. The response from Hell is relentless, coordinated, and merciless. Waves of high-tier devils surge through Tokyo like a living tide, their forms grotesque and ever-shifting, designed to overwhelm by sheer force of presence. Streets that moments ago were just cracked and damaged are now rivers of chaos, concrete splintered, buildings crumbling under the weight of attacks. Yet Jinwoo does not panic. Shadows coil at his feet, extending outward like sentinels anticipating every trajectory, intercepting each assault before it lands. They do not merely defend, they erase, dissect, and neutralize with precision that defies even the primal instincts of his enemies. Each erasure sends ripples of panic back into Hell itself, a clear signal that the Shadow Monarch cannot be contained by conventional force. The primal devils, those few entities that should have been untouchable by any hunter, coordinate with a terrifying intelligence. They anticipate patterns, form flanking formations, and exploit terrain with a level of strategy only Hell's most ancient minds could dictate. Yet Jinwoo adapts faster than the patterns can evolve, his shadows reacting almost before the threat manifests, neutralizing each strike with surgical efficiency. The scale of the battle grows exponentially, but the pattern is clear. This is not a war of attrition. It is a war of impossibility. Every devil sent to subdue him is erased in full before it can complete its purpose, destabilizing the chain of command and throwing Hell into a reactive spiral. Above the battlefield, the skyline shudders as if acknowledging the unprecedented conflict. Air currents shift unnaturally, shadows stretch longer, and the very light of the day seems subdued, filtered through the weight of countless erased entities. Civilians flee instinctively, their terror real but incomplete, as the presence of death is erased before it can imprint. Jinwoo moves calmly through the chaos, calculating every shadow, every strike, every potential outcome. Each step, each gesture is deliberate, ensuring that while he remains the epicenter of destruction, he maintains control over collateral variables, preserving the human lives that matter less to Hell than to him. Makima observes from afar, detached yet calculating, noting the interplay between Jinwoo and the primal forces mobilized by Hell. She recognizes patterns in his movements, the almost preternatural efficiency of his responses, and the way his shadows interact not only with the attackers, but with the battlefield itself. This is not brute force. This is domination through understanding, through anticipation, through rewriting the rules that even primal entities rely upon. She notes the consequences of each erased devil, the breakdown of a hierarchy, and the shift in the ecosystem of fear. Jinwoo does not merely survive. He actively reshapes the battlefield, forcing Hell to adapt in real time. The coordination among Hell's forces grows more desperate. Smaller devils swarm to support their larger counterparts, attempting to distract and divide the Shadow Monarch's focus. Yet the shadows move fluidly, preempting every maneuver, enveloping attackers in patterns designed not just to neutralize, but to anticipate subsequent waves. Jinwoo's calm, measured approach contrasts starkly with the frenzied intensity of his enemies. They are driven by instinct, by fear, by hierarchy, and he is driven by calculation, observation, and the unshakable certainty that he cannot be contained. Hell escalates further. Ancient entities, thought too powerful to manifest outside of cataclysmic events, descend upon the city. Their forms ripple with primal energy, massive, otherworldly, embodiments of fear refined to perfection over eons. They strike in unison, a calculated symphony of terror meant to fracture the Shadow Monarch's defenses. Yet Jinwoo remains methodical. Shadows divide, strike, and dissolve attacks before they ever reach him, each movement precise, each erasure deliberate. The battlefield becomes a study in contrasts, chaos colliding with order, instinct battling calculation, fear attempting to impose itself upon inevitability. Even as the primal devils strike again and again, the system that sustains Hell begins to falter. Chains of command break, resurrection cycles fail, and high-tier entities hesitate, uncertain how to engage an opponent who defies every expected variable. Jinwoo observes it all, noting patterns, weaknesses, and anomalies. He does not exult in the destruction. He does not rage against the tide. He simply moves, existing within the eye of a storm that Hell itself cannot fully comprehend. The Shadow Monarch has become not only the apex of hunters, but a systemic disruptor, a singular variable that threatens to unravel centuries of hierarchical control, forcing Hell to confront the reality that one being has rewritten the rules of engagement entirely. The battlefield becomes almost surreal, a place where conventional rules of combat no longer apply. Skyscrapers crumble as collateral, rivers of debris twisting around massive devils. But Jinwoo remains untouched, his shadows acting like extensions of his consciousness, probing every angle, sealing every avenue of attack before it can materialize. High-tier and primal devils alike begin to hesitate, their coordinated assaults faltering as the predictability they depend on is stripped away. Jinwoo moves through the chaos like a storm contained, each step precise, each shadow a blade, a shield, a calculated erasure. The city is no longer just a setting. It has become a tool, a measured instrument through which the Shadow Monarch shapes the battlefield, bending space, fear, and threat to his design. Deep within Hell, councils of ancient devils convene, their forms massive and incomprehensible, pulsating with the accumulated fear and authority of countless generations. Whispers circulate, discussing strategy, assessing risk, but fear of the unknown dominates their discourse. None have faced a being who can erase the constructs of Hell so effortlessly. Each failed attempt to contain Jinwoo sends shockwaves through their ranks, destabilizing hierarchy and provoking panic among even the oldest and most powerful. They recalibrate constantly, unleashing combinations of attacks that would obliterate ordinary hunters, yet Jinwoo anticipates and counters without apparent effort, leaving their strategies impotent. Hell escalates further. Entire contingents of specialized devils previously reserved for cataclysmic enforcement converge in precise formations designed to overwhelm through attrition and terror. Their manifestations are nightmarish, bodies fused with weapons, eyes glowing with intent, claws and appendages shaped to maximize fear. Yet Jinwoo's shadows intercept with preternatural speed, dissolving these entities mid-strike, neutralizing both the physical and psychological threats before they can take hold. Even the very laws that govern fear in this universe appear to bend around him, rewriting causality as though acknowledging that the Shadow Monarch cannot be processed through conventional paradigms. Civilians watch from a distance, their understanding fragmented. They see buildings collapse, streets fracture, devils appear and vanish. Yet the man moving through it all remains untouched, composed, almost serene. To them he is a phantom, a savior, a terror. The more hell escalates, the more this perception solidifies. Jinwoo's presence alone destabilizes their fear, creating gaps in the ecosystem that devils rely upon for sustenance. Every erased entity, every neutralized assault feeds back into the system, amplifying the ripple effect that threatens to fracture Hell's command entirely. Makima observes silently, her gaze sharp and calculating. She sees the coordination, the precision, and the adaptability of Jinwoo's shadows, noting how he uses the environment, how he manages not only combatants, but the battlefield itself. The implications are clear. This is not brute strength alone. This is strategic genius manifested through shadows, a force capable of recalibrating in real time to counter the infinite variables of Hell's response. Her lips curve slightly, almost imperceptibly, as she recognizes the significance. The Shadow Monarch is not simply surviving. He is reshaping the rules of engagement in a way that even her authority cannot fully predict. As night falls, the intensity increases. Skies darken unnaturally, charged with the energy of primal entities and the ripples of erased existence. High-tier devils coordinate larger, more sophisticated attacks, attempting to divide Jinwoo's focus, yet each maneuver is anticipated, countered, and erased with efficiency that defies natural laws. Every attempt to overwhelm him is met with surgical precision. Shadows stretch across rooftops, streets, and debris, interlocking in patterns that create both offensive and defensive networks, dissolving threats before they can form cohesion. Even Hell's oldest, most intelligent entities hesitate, realizing that conventional tactics are insufficient. Orders within Hell grow desperate. Councils call for concentrated strikes, demanding that the Shadow Monarch be neutralized at any cost. Yet for every escalation, Jinwoo responds not with panic, but with methodical adaptability. He identifies patterns, predicts outcomes, and applies his shadows selectively, creating zones of nullification where devils attempting to coordinate are erased before cohesion is achieved. The battlefield becomes less a fight and more a study in dominance. Chaos pushed against inevitability, instinct against calculated erasure. Hell realizes that the variable it is trying to eliminate cannot be confronted in the ways it has always relied upon. In the midst of it all, Jinwoo pauses momentarily atop a collapsed skyscraper, surveying the battlefield with eyes that have calculated every probability. The destruction around him is staggering, yet controlled. Each erasure precise, each threat accounted for. He does not rage, does not panic, does not overextend. He is methodical, patient, and unshakable. The primal devils, those apex enforcers of Hell, circle with increasing desperation, realizing that the Shadow Monarch is not merely fighting. He is dismantling the very rules by which they operate. With each passing moment, it becomes undeniable. Hell has declared war on an entity that cannot be intimidated, coerced, or bound, and the Shadow Monarch is not merely surviving. He is asserting dominion over the battlefield itself, rewriting the rules in real time and forcing Hell to confront the terrifying reality that this war may already be unwinnable. Hell recognizes the failure of conventional tactics almost immediately. Every devil, every primal enforcer, every command sent to suppress Jinwoo collapses into erasure before its purpose is realized. In the deepest chambers of hell, councils of ancient entities pulse with fury and confusion. Communication threads between them break and reconfigure, as though reality itself hesitates before the Shadow Monarch. Plans designed over millennia, contingencies refined through endless cycles of fear and death, disintegrate in moments. Jinwoo has not merely resisted, he has rewritten the parameters of engagement, forcing hell to acknowledge an anomaly too vast to ignore, too intelligent to underestimate, and too dangerous to engage with standard protocols. Across Tokyo, buildings smolder from collisions of primal forces and erased entities, streets collapse under the strain of attacks that never fully materialized, and civilians flee instinctively, guided by primal terror and yet shielded by the very erasures Jinwoo executes. High-tier and primal devils hesitate as shadows intercept their attacks preemptively. Some retreat only to return, reshaped, more coordinated, and more desperate. Yet Jinwoo anticipates, dismantles, and nullifies each wave before it can coalesce. The battlefield is no longer a series of fights. It is a systemic disruption, a demonstration that one being's existence can collapse the frameworks of entire hierarchies and forces. Makima observes silently, her eyes reflecting both fascination and concern. She recognizes what hell itself is only beginning to accept. The Shadow Monarch operates outside the conventional systems of fear, contracts, and hierarchy. He does not merely overpower, he restructures, erases, and redefines. Her mind catalogs every movement, every shadowed erasure, every calculated response, understanding that control, negotiation, or coercion are futile. Even her extensive mastery of human and devil psychology would fail against this precision and adaptability. For the first time, she sees a being whose authority cannot be questioned, but also cannot be absorbed, coerced, or manipulated. As the night deepens, hell escalates further. Entire fleets of ancient devils, some so massive that their very presence bends gravity and light, converge on Jinwoo with the intent of overwhelming him through sheer scale. Each strike, each coordinated assault is met with shadows that extend like rivers of ink, dissolving attacks mid-air, severing manifestations of power before they consolidate, and nullifying threats before they are realized. The battlefield becomes almost incomprehensible, a blend of chaos and order, instinct and calculation, fear and inevitability. Every erased entity sends feedback into hell's hierarchy, destabilizing chains of command, creating panic and forcing rapid recalibration of strategy. Jinwoo moves with deliberate precision, his shadows extending, coiling, and striking with preternatural timing. He does not overextend. He does not rage. He does not act impulsively. He simply calculates, reacts, and erases. Each movement reshapes the battlefield, turns chaos into a controllable pattern, and undermines the primal instincts of his enemies. Even the most ancient devils hesitate, their attacks faltering as they attempt to adjust to a force that anticipates, neutralizes, and dominates in ways beyond their comprehension. Fear itself becomes unreliable, as it cannot propagate fully when erasures remove both its carriers and the consequences. The escalation continues with ever more aggressive and complex strategies. Hell begins to coordinate multiple waves simultaneously, attempting to split Jinwoo's focus, attack through unexpected vectors, and exploit terrain. Yet his shadows divide, move fluidly, and respond preemptively, creating zones of nullification where even the most sophisticated attacks are neutralized. Each wave reinforces the lesson. Standard hierarchies, fear-based control, and raw power are insufficient to contain this entity. Hell adapts in real time, but so does the Shadow Monarch, anticipating, dismantling, and reshaping the battlefield as if it were an extension of his will. By midnight, the city has become a surreal war zone. Skyscrapers lie shattered, streets fractured, fires burn uncontrolled, and yet Jinwoo stands almost serene amidst it all, his shadows constantly shifting, coiling and striking with calculated precision. Primal devils circle, ancient and vast, aware that direct confrontation is futile, yet unable to retreat fully. Their hierarchy falters, their coordination breaks, and even Hell's most calculated strategies begin to unravel. The realization spreads among the highest ranks of Hell. The Shadow Monarch is not merely a threat. He is an existential anomaly, a being who cannot be intimidated, coerced, or contained. Each erasure of a primal devil, each disruption of fear's flow, amplifies the inevitability of his dominance. The declaration of war, once theoretical, has become a tangible, ongoing conflict. And in that understanding, Hell acknowledges the terrifying truth. It has mobilized every resource, every strategy, every ancient power, and yet stands no chance of defeating the Shadow Monarch through conventional means. Jinwoo pauses atop a fractured skyscraper, surveying the devastation and the futile waves of Hell's forces. His eyes scan the battlefield, calculating outcomes, noting patterns, and preparing for the next assault. He does not smile. He does not shout. He simply exists, the calm eye at the center of an unrelenting storm, a singular force that has drawn the full attention of Hell itself. Every attack, every maneuver, every escalation reinforces the message. The Shadow Monarch cannot be controlled. He cannot be stopped. And Hell, for the first time in millennia, must confront the reality of a predator beyond its authority, a force that will shape the battlefield, the city, and the universe according to his will. The city is unrecognizable now, a shattered landscape of steel and concrete, smoke curling into a blood-red sky as fires burn unchecked in pockets of destruction. Jinwoo moves with measured precision, shadows trailing from his form like living extensions of his will, weaving through the chaos with calm inevitability. The remnants of Hell's forces scatter around him, some regrouping to test his defenses, others dissolving under preemptive strikes, leaving nothing behind but echoes and ash. Even the air itself feels charged, weighted by the clash of forces beyond human comprehension, the hum of unspent energy vibrating through the fractured streets. Civilians hide wherever they can, terrified yet strangely shielded, the erasures and preemptive neutralizations of Jinwoo's shadows ensuring their survival amidst a war that has escalated beyond conventional understanding. Chains of control once wielded by Makima and the higher echelons of public safety now lie disrupted, fractured under the sheer weight of unpredictability. Makima watches from a distance, her composure intact, yet her analytical mind races to process what she has witnessed. Jinwoo's shadows do not merely defend. They erase, preempt, and recalibrate in real time, rendering even her nuanced understanding of manipulation almost obsolete. The chains she wields, those invisible threads of influence over mind and matter, cannot touch him. Every subtle suggestion, every latent command is met with analysis, adaptation, and subtle countermeasures. She recognizes now that the man before her is beyond hierarchy, beyond control, a force that reshapes the battlefield and rewrites the rules of interaction in real time. Hell's response intensifies. Primal devils, massive beyond comprehension, converge again in coordinated waves, their roars shaking the remnants of buildings, their presence warping perception and fear alike. Yet Jinwoo remains methodical, his shadows dancing across the battlefield with lethal elegance, intercepting attacks before they fully manifest. Entire streets collapse under the weight of engagements that never resolve conventionally, the laws of physics bending around the erasures he imposes. Every devil sent is systematically removed from existence, and with each erasure, Hell's hierarchy falters further, panic creeping into entities that have existed for millennia without question. Chains stretch through the city, real and symbolic, forming barriers, anchoring collapsing structures, and guiding civilians to pockets of relative safety. Jinwoo manipulates them with precision, not as weapons, but as tools of survival and control. His shadows intertwine with the chains, creating an invisible lattice of dominance across the city, a network that both defends and eradicates. Devils attempting to navigate these intersections of force are destroyed before they can coordinate, their hierarchy unraveling as the battlefield itself becomes an extension of the Shadow Monarch's will. Each movement is a calculated assertion of control, a demonstration that destruction is not chaos but intentional, structured, and inevitable. Makima observes the interplay with fascination and concern. She notes the fluidity of Jinwoo's command over shadows, chains, and space itself, the way he converts destruction into structured control without reliance on fear or obedience. Her understanding of contracts, hierarchies, and the manipulation of human and devil behavior is comprehensive. Yet here is a being who refuses every assumption she has ever made. She studies his methodical erasures, the way the battlefield bends around him, and the subtle, almost imperceptible ways he preserves order even amidst devastation. She realizes that influence over him requires more than coercion, more than authority, and more than fear. It requires adaptation to principles he himself defines. Hell escalates further, desperate to overwhelm the Shadow Monarch. Ancient, massive entities, some older than human memory, converge in calculated, multi-tiered assaults designed to break him through numbers, power, and intimidation. Their forms shift constantly, weapons morphing into appendages, roars echoing as psychic pressure ripples across the battlefield. Yet Jinwoo's shadows respond with precision, dissolving attacks mid-air, neutralizing the hierarchy of their coordination before it can form. The city itself bends to his will, streets shattering yet guiding, debris redirecting attacks, and chains reinforcing pathways while simultaneously isolating threats. Each erased entity weakens Hell's ability to maintain cohesion, forcing recalibration even among the oldest, most intelligent devils. Despite the chaos, Jinwoo's focus remains singular. Shadows swirl like a living armor around him, adapting, dividing, and striking with preternatural timing. Civilians who glimpse him perceive not a man, but a force of inevitability, a singular presence around which the laws of destruction and survival bend. The battlefield is a testament to both his methodical strategy and the scale of the threat he poses to Hell, not merely physical but systemic. Each action dismantles structures of control, reshapes fear, and establishes his dominance without the need for rage or hasty violence. Makima steps forward briefly, observing, calculating. She recognizes that this is no longer a confrontation of willpower or manipulation. This is a clash of principles, a battle between an entity that commands through inevitability and one that commands through authority. Even her influence, subtle and pervasive, cannot bend the Shadow Monarch to conventional expectations. She watches as Jinwoo orchestrates destruction and preservation simultaneously, shadows and chains interweaving across the battlefield, creating zones of nullification and safety, asserting dominance without arrogance, and maintaining control without coercion. The city becomes a living chessboard. Shadows serve as pawns, knights, and bishops, intercepting attacks, neutralizing threats, and redirecting energy. Chains act as both barriers and conduits, reinforcing structures, isolating enemies, and guiding survival. The interplay is seamless, an intricate web of offensive and defensive strategies executed with perfect timing. Hell's forces, massive and coordinated, fail to grasp the complexity of his control. Each wave of primal and high-tier devils is anticipated and dismantled before full engagement, leaving only the echoes of intent and fragments of destruction. As dawn threatens the horizon, the battlefield reaches a temporary equilibrium. Jinwoo stands atop a fractured skyscraper, shadows coiling at his feet, chains intertwined with collapsing structures, surveying a city broken yet maintained under his dominion. Hell, frustrated and fearful, acknowledges the impossibility of conventional suppression. The Shadow Monarch does not merely exist in the battlefield. He has become the battlefield, a singular force capable of bending the very rules of existence, commanding shadows, chains, and the remnants of a broken world with unshakable precision, setting the stage for consequences that will reshape both his enemies and the universe itself. Hell's forces regroup as if the battlefield itself has betrayed them. High-tier and primal devils, those ancient enforcers of fear, shuffle into formation with careful calculation, yet every attempt to approach Jinwoo meets with preemptive erasure. The Shadow Monarch does not strike blindly. Shadows stretch like an intelligent network, analyzing threat vectors, isolating each assault, and neutralizing them before they can materialize fully. The city becomes both a weapon and a shield, a living instrument of strategy where collapsing streets predict patterns only to be intercepted by shadows or anchored by chains. Every erasure destabilizes Hell's hierarchy further, leaving even the oldest, most cunning devils questioning the rules of engagement they have relied on for millennia. Jinwoo's eyes scan the battlefield with meticulous precision, observing the movement of every devil, the subtle shifts in energy, and the patterns emerging from Hell's desperate adaptations. He does not rush. He does not overextend. His shadows move almost independently, responding in perfect harmony with his will, intercepting attacks, isolating threats, and erasing entities with minimal effort. The battlefield itself bends to his control, an extension of his consciousness where chaos is systematically converted into manageable variables. Even the air seems to pulse with anticipation, carrying echoes of erasure that ripple through Hell's ranks like a virus. Makima watches from a distant rooftop, her gaze analytical and sharp. She notes the elegance of Jinwoo's execution, the way destruction becomes control, how erasure becomes a tool for shaping not just the battlefield, but the behavior of every enemy present. She recognizes that the Shadow Monarch operates on a level of systemic manipulation that transcends conventional hierarchy and authority. Where she wields contracts, influence, and fear, Jinwoo wields inevitability itself. Even the most carefully laid plans of Hell's ancient entities crumble under his methodical precision, proving that dominance in this war is not a measure of raw power, but of control over the flow of reality itself. The devils respond with escalating intensity. Massive formations converge, coordinating attacks across multiple vectors to split the Shadow Monarch's focus. Their size and strength would overwhelm any ordinary hunter, yet Jinwoo's shadows anticipate the trajectories, intercepting blows before they can land and erasing entities before their attacks reach maturity. Entire streets collapse under the combined weight of assault and countermeasure, yet Jinwoo's chains reinforce critical structures, guide civilians to safety, and channel enemy forces into zones where shadows await. The battlefield becomes a symphony of destruction and control, chaos harnessed and directed with unerring precision. Even as Hell's forces escalate, they begin to fracture under the pressure of repeated failure. High-tier devils hesitate, coordination falters, and primal entities overcommit to attacks that cannot succeed. Jinwoo does not exploit recklessly. He simply maintains dominance, allowing the battlefield to unfold according to his calculation. Each erased entity sends feedback through Hell's hierarchy, forcing adaptation in real time while simultaneously destabilizing the command structure. The Shadow Monarch has become not merely an apex predator, but a systemic disruptor, a force whose existence alone erodes the efficiency and authority of Hell's vast armies. Civilians watch from hidden vantage points, some terrified, others awestruck. The man they see is not just a hunter, but an agent of inevitability. Buildings crumble, streets fracture, and shadows shift like living beings, yet he moves calmly amidst it all. Chains intertwine with ruins, shadows coil around attacks, and the battlefield itself bends to his will. Every move is deliberate, calculated, and efficient. Even Hell's most intelligent entities sense that they are contending with something beyond comprehension, a force that does not merely fight but reorganizes, reshapes, and asserts control over the very nature of conflict. By late night, the battlefield reaches a tense standoff. The surviving devils, battered and hesitant, regroup to reassess their strategy. Primal entities hover above fractured streets, their forms massive and imposing. Yet even they hesitate to engage fully, aware of the futility of direct assault. Jinwoo's shadows extend across every strategic axis, chains reinforcing structural points, and the city itself becomes a living grid of defense, offense, and observation. His focus remains unwavering, his strategy systematic, and his dominance absolute. Makima's observation continues, her analytical mind racing to interpret the battlefield. She notes the interplay of shadows and chains, the precision of erasures, and the calculated restraint of Jinwoo's movements. She realizes that he does not fight merely to survive or dominate. He operates with purpose, turning destruction into structure, chaos into control, and inevitability into strategy. Where Hell's forces rely on fear, numbers, and brute strength, Jinwoo relies on anticipation, adaptation, and systemic control. In this broken city, amidst a storm of devils and erasure, he stands as the singular force capable of redefining what it means to wield power in a world that has never seen anything like him. The battlefield stretches endlessly, a scarred cityscape that bears witness to the clash between inevitability and instinct. Jinwoo's shadows coil and shift like living entities, forming layers of offense and defense that move in perfect synchronization with his will. Chains anchor collapsing buildings, guide terrified civilians to safety, and act as conduits, redirecting enemy forces into calculated traps. Every primal devil that descends, every high-tier entity that attempts to coordinate an assault, is met not with brute force alone, but with precision erasure, neutralization, and the subtle reshaping of the battlefield itself. Hell's forces begin to realize that they are not facing a hunter in the traditional sense. They are confronting a systemic anomaly, a being whose control extends beyond physical combat and into the very framework of their reality. The largest of the primal devils swoops down, wings spanning blocks, eyes glowing with centuries of accumulated fear. Its attack is coordinated, precise, meant to overwhelm Jinwoo's shadows and strike at his central position. Yet even this fails. Shadows spread across rooftops, streets, and debris, intercepting the attack in microseconds. The devil's form fractures under the erasure, collapsing into nothingness before it can land a blow, sending shockwaves back into Hell's command structures. The message is clear. No matter the scale, no matter the coordination, the Shadow Monarch cannot be contained. Each failure reverberates through Hell, eroding confidence, undermining hierarchy, and escalating desperation. Jinwoo does not celebrate. He does not exult. His focus is total, his movements measured. Shadows extend, coil, and strike with intent, each action carefully calculated to maintain control over the battlefield. Chains link structures and debris into a living lattice, guiding movement, restricting enemy options, and asserting dominion over the flow of combat. Civilians caught in the periphery are protected by zones of nullification, areas where erasures remove threats before they can manifest fully. The city itself becomes an extension of his strategy, a living instrument of offense, defense, and observation simultaneously. Makima watches intently, analyzing every nuance. She recognizes the elegance in the Shadow Monarch's approach, the way destruction becomes a tool, how erasure serves strategy, and how chaos is transformed into structured control. She understands now that influence over him cannot rely on fear or authority alone. Jinwoo wields inevitability itself, moving not just to erase threats, but to shape the battlefield in accordance with his own parameters. Even she, who has manipulated countless humans and devils alike, cannot predict his next move. He operates on a level where control is not asserted, but designed, where dominance is demonstrated through the orchestration of inevitability rather than brute force or fear. Hell grows desperate. Ancient devils of unimaginable size and intelligence are deployed in coordinated strikes, attempting to split Jinwoo's focus, overwhelm his shadows, and exploit potential vulnerabilities in his lattice of chains and erasure zones. Yet every move is anticipated. Shadows adapt fluidly, erasing threats before they can consolidate, nullifying attacks in midair, and converting aggression into positional advantage. Even the oldest and most cunning entities hesitate, uncertain how to engage a being that does not follow the expected rules of combat or hierarchy. The battlefield becomes a study in contrasts. Primal instinct and fear collide with calculated inevitability, and the line between offense and defense blurs entirely. Despite the unrelenting onslaught, Jinwoo maintains absolute control. His shadows respond autonomously, yet in perfect alignment with his strategy, intercepting every vector of attack, preserving civilians, and systematically dismantling enemy formations. Each erasure sends ripples through Hell's command, destabilizing coordination, forcing real-time adaptation, and eroding confidence among the most ancient devils. The city quakes under the sheer magnitude of engagement, yet within the chaos, Jinwoo remains an unshakable pivot, the singular force around which every wave of attack folds and disintegrates. Makima observes, understanding that the confrontation has transcended conventional measures of power. This is no longer a battle of strength, manipulation, or hierarchy. It is a clash of principles, inevitability against instinct, calculation against chaos, and systemic control against primal authority. She notes the precision of every shadow, the orchestration of chains, and the subtle management of collateral variables. Jinwoo's actions are deliberate, efficient, and exacting, demonstrating a mastery over combat and environment that redefines the concept of dominance. As the night deepens, Hell's forces falter under the weight of repeated erasures. High-tier and primal devils hesitate, coordination fails, and ancient entities overcommit to strikes that cannot succeed. Jinwoo does not overextend. He allows the battlefield to unfold according to his calculations, using the chaos to reinforce his control, channel his shadows, and expand zones of erasure. The city itself becomes a living chessboard, each ruined street, collapsed building, and swinging chain a piece manipulated with precision. Even Hell begins to acknowledge the terrifying reality. The Shadow Monarch is not merely a threat, but a force that defines the rules of engagement entirely. Jinwoo pauses atop a shattered skyscraper, shadows coiling around his form like a living cloak. Chains weave through the ruins, connecting debris, isolating threats, and guiding movements across the battlefield. Below, Hell's forces regroup for yet another assault, massive and desperate, yet the anticipation in Jinwoo's eyes suggests that the outcome has already been calculated. Civilians hidden in the periphery watch in awe, some trembling, others stunned into silence. In this broken city, amid erased devils, shattered structures, and twisted streets, one thing is clear. Jinwoo has become more than a hunter. He has become a singular force of inevitability, a shadow monarch whose control over chains, shadows, and the fractured world around him leaves even Hell itself uncertain of how to proceed. Jinwoo surveys the battlefield from his perch atop the skeletal remains of a skyscraper, the shadows at his feet stretching like tendrils into every ruined street and alleyway. The city is a fractured labyrinth, fires burning in scattered pockets, rubble piled high where buildings once stood, and yet every moment of chaos is under his absolute control. Chains hang from mangled structures, twisting and anchoring the debris, creating pathways and barriers simultaneously. Shadows swirl around them, dissolving any devil or entity foolish enough to challenge his calculated dominion. He is calm, composed, almost serene, as if the destruction around him is nothing more than a controlled experiment in inevitability. Hell's forces, despite their overwhelming numbers, begin to hesitate. Every primal devil sent is either neutralized before it can land a blow or erased mid-assault, leaving their ancient minds in a spiral of confusion. The patterns of fear and instinct they rely upon fail to materialize, and the chaos of the battlefield bends to the methodical precision of the Shadow Monarch. The largest devils, ancient and titanic, hesitate at the edges of his shadow domain. They had been sent to overwhelm him through raw power, to crush his forces under sheer might and terror. Yet the erasure of lesser entities has destabilized the chain of command, leaving them isolated in an unpredictable battlefield. Jinwoo moves with precision, shadows splitting, striking, and reshaping positions, erasing threats before they can form cohesion. Chains swing and coil, guiding debris and creating barriers while simultaneously channeling enemy movement into zones of controlled destruction. Civilians, few and hidden, are shielded within these zones, unaware of the near-infinite calculation occurring around them. Even the air feels heavy with the weight of erasures, of annihilated threats, of a battlefield remade according to one being's absolute dominion. Makima watches silently from afar, her face unreadable but her eyes sharp. She recognizes now that Jinwoo is not simply a hunter, not merely a combatant. He operates on a level where inevitability itself is a weapon, where shadows, chains, and environmental control replace brute force or conventional authority. Influence, coercion, fear, tools that she has wielded for years with devastating efficiency, cannot touch him. His movements, his erasures, his management of the battlefield demonstrate a principle she respects but cannot control: absolute dominance through understanding, adaptation, and precise execution. Hell, despite deploying its oldest and most powerful entities, falters because it cannot predict, control, or intimidate him. As dawn creeps over the horizon, the scale of destruction becomes fully apparent. Streets are fractured, skyscrapers reduced to skeletal frames, and fires rage across the cityscape. Yet the chaos has order embedded within it. Jinwoo's shadows patrol every zone, erasing threats, managing the flow of enemy movement, and ensuring that the battlefield bends to his will. Chains anchor what remains of buildings, stabilize areas for civilians, and enforce strategic control over terrain. Every devil still standing hesitates, unsure whether to flee, attack, or simply wait, their instincts rendered unreliable against an entity who bends reality around him rather than conforming to it. Hell itself begins to reconsider its approach. Communication breaks down, orders falter, and the ancient hierarchy that has maintained balance for millennia trembles under the realization that this is not a fight that can be won through brute force, fear, or coordination alone. The Shadow Monarch is not a participant. He is the axis around which the battle now revolves. Every wave of attack, every desperate strike from primal and high-tier devils reinforces the truth. He defines the battlefield, he defines engagement, and he will not be constrained by conventional rules. Jinwoo pauses momentarily, his shadows tightening around him, chains vibrating subtly as if responding to his intent alone. The city lies broken, yet under his control. Devils tremble at the edges of his domain. Civilians remain alive despite the chaos, and even Hell's most powerful entities are forced to acknowledge the inevitability of his dominance. He does not gloat. He does not shout. He simply exists, a calm, singular force whose mastery over shadows, chains, and the very remnants of the world around him ensures that the battlefield and the rules that govern it bend entirely to his will. In this fractured city, under the red-streaked sky, the message is unmistakable. The Shadow Monarch has arrived, and no chain, no devil, no principle of fear or authority can contain him. The conflict has reshaped everything. Hell's hierarchy falters, the city is broken, and Jinwoo stands as the undeniable axis of control, shadows and chains intertwining across the battlefield to assert his dominion. The world itself seems to pause, recognizing that this is not a fight that can be approached conventionally. This is a new reality, defined by one being who refuses limitation, who commands through inevitability, and who reshapes destruction into structured dominance. As the camera pans over the ruined skyline, shadows stretching across streets and buildings, chains weaving through the wreckage, and the remnants of erased devils scattered like echoes of failure, the video concludes with a final thought. In a world of primal fear, uncontrollable entities, and broken hierarchies, one force stands unchallenged. The Shadow Monarch does not merely fight. He commands, he shapes, and he defines the battlefield itself. And hell, for all its power and strategy, has finally realized the terrifying truth. Some forces cannot be contained. Some predators cannot be challenged. And some shadows will always dominate. This is where we leave our story, for now, with a world broken but under absolute control, a Shadow Monarch unshaken, and a battlefield that has been forever transformed. The war has begun, the stakes are higher than ever, and one thing is certain. The Shadow Monarch has arrived, and nothing will ever be the same.